growing the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of good, hard-working Americans every year in this country for no good reason. There's absolutely nothing wrong with smoking pot. For more information on how you can help legalize marijuana, please contact NORML at NORML.org.
It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earleywine. Dr. Earleywine is a professor of psychology at the State University of New York at Albany and a leading author and researcher on cannabinoids and health, who pins the Ask Dr. Mitch column for High Times Magazine. Get your questions ready in our live chat or call in to 971-533-7111 now.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're live with Dr. Mitch Earleywine on the line. How are you doing, Dr. Mitch?
Having a great day.
I'm having a great day, too. A whole bunch of it. It's like 108 degrees out here. So I just wanted to let you know I got my sunscreen, and I'm drinking plenty of fluids.
You know how I love that hydration.
I love it, too. All right, so, folks, if you're new to the segment here, every Monday, Dr. Mitch Earleywine joins us to take your cannabis-related questions on science, culture, history, and health. You can get them into our chat room. If you put capital Q : that'll kind of highlight it, so it makes it easier for us to find. But we always start off by giving Dr. Mitch the first word here on what the latest studies are regarding cannabis and its users. What's happening, Dr. Mitch?
Well, Russ, you already did such a great job on that teen use research that just came out confirming that, in fact, medical marijuana laws don't increase teen use. I just want to compliment you on what a great methodologist you've become over the years, and you're a consumer of research now. I would like to point folks towards the Humboldt Journal of Social Relations, which has a superb article by Dr. Wendy Chapkus, who some folks know from the University of Southern Maine. She's spoken at normal conferences and a number of conferences before, and it's called The Trouble with Mary Jane's Gender, and really focuses on how, in some ways, the movement has neglected women. Some of the depictions of women in cannabis are more sexist than we'd probably be proud of, and that women are the ones who vote. Women vote at higher percentages than men, particularly at the younger ages, and that, you know, the movement really needs to reach out and find out what do women want, and how can we get them to help in ending the war on drugs?
Well, and especially when we see the women's support for marijuana legalization usually lags 5 to 10 points behind that of men's. If they're voting more often, that's even more exacerbated. So we've got to find out what women are all about on the marijuana issue. A lot of great activist groups out there that are working on this. Normal Women's Alliance, Moms for Marijuana. And in fact, there's been some publications now. I understand Ladybud.com, our friend and Normal board member Diane Fornbacher running that organization. So lots of outlets out there, Dr. Mitch.
It's delightful, actually, to see how Ladybud has taken off, and I'm just really intrigued. I'm training my own students and getting as many women involved as I can, but here's a chance for us men to shut up and listen, and so I really want to take advantage of that.
All right. And I wanted to ask also, with regard to this, this study, the teen marijuana use hasn't gone up. I always look to the future, and we've got more states that are legalizing outright for recreational use. And we've got a chatter who comes onto our show boards quite a bit who worries about, what's going to happen if we legalize marijuana in Colorado and Washington, and then 2 years later when we get the survey data in, we find, oh my God, teen use went way, way up. And I have a theory, or hypothesis, I suppose, and I'd like to run it by you, is that if something like that were to happen, if we were to see a spike in use, in reported use, couldn't it be that now that it's legal, there's just more people willing to be honest about what they're already smoking?
In fact, that's absolutely the case. And one of my grad students and I have been talking about trying to gather some data in Colorado and then in neighboring states where they don't have the same kind of laws. We use a technique where you make it more and more anonymous, essentially, and are finding, in fact, that over the years, people are more willing to fess up to having used cannabis, and that some of these elaborate techniques that used to show people were more likely to lie on the surveys are now revealing that, in fact, at least as far as cannabis use is concerned, they don't lie, even though they lie about other things like cheating on exams or snorting coke or things like that. So I'm quite optimistic that is a compelling explanation for any increases. I want to point out, too, that just as we have some rituals around turning 21 and using a lot of alcohol right on that exact day, we do see in the Netherlands when folks become of age to go to the coffee shops, they do have a big day like that, too. But that I don't want to make too much of this, in fact, because cannabis is nowhere near as lethal or toxic as alcohol, and that if it does show an increase in use, we shouldn't jump to assume that that means an increase in problems. And I feel like that's where the United States has really fallen down, is that we're much more freaked out about taking a puff than we are about folks showing symptoms of dependence. And I think that's where the worry really should be.
Well, sure, and that stat doesn't occur in a vacuum either. If use of marijuana goes up, but drunk driving goes down, and binge drinking goes down, and prescription drug use goes down, it could be a net good.
Exactly, and it's funny because just bringing that up freaks some people out. They find that inconceivable. We have seen this decrease in binge drinking in at least some larger economic studies, and some curious and interesting decreases in prescription drug use, as well as tons and tons of anecdotal reports about how folks got off hard drugs by using cannabis. So I really want to keep that open.
Absolutely. All right, there was another story we did in the news today. The Mayo Clinic, Dr. J. Michael Bostwick, one of the psychiatrists out there, authored a press release that said that teens with chronic pain should not use medical marijuana because, quote, the consequences may be very, very severe, particularly for adolescents who may get rid of their pain or not at the expense of the rest of their life, end quote. So, gosh, I guess we should keep giving them Ritalin and other drugs, but not pot.
I mean, it's just so hard to take that kind of drama seriously, you know. At the expense of the rest of their life, right? And, in fact, when you look at, some of the problems related to getting strung out on opiates for pain, these certainly pale in comparison, and we really are jumping the gun here. Yeah, we do see the occasional type 1 error where folks who started heavy use before age 18 have some brain anomalies. If you really put them under the microscope, you might be able to detect them. But compared to what? And I think that that's the key issue is long-term use of the opiates. We've seen tolerance develop rapidly. You get a lot of other potential problems. And nobody's saying, hey, this has to be something that you have to do mega doses every single day so you're just stoned to the bone and can't learn anything or things like that. We've seen tolerance to THC at low doses, particularly doses that are appropriate for pain. We don't want too much because it actually heightens pain. And that the subjective effects show tolerance before the analgesic ones. So some folks can get relief of the pain without really reporting any subjective effects, and that would be perfect and ideal and could get folks through a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot easier than any of the opiate drugs. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, we're getting some questions coming in from the chat room now here. John Thomas notes a study that has come out of, let me see if I can get the link here. Study has come out from Germany finding that cannabis combats brain degeneration and increases stamina. Have you heard of this study, and does this say that marijuana is now preventative medicine, perhaps?
I haven't seen that individual one. I've seen one comparable about, just battling neurotoxins in general and the chance to, increase neurogenesis. But again, we're getting ahead of the human data. So most of the stuff is still petri dish, individual neuron level, or finally into the rodents. We don't know if it's going to generalize. But things like this suggest to me that it's time to really get this research out there and to start funding it. And it's curious because when you call NIDA now, they say it's not our job. So you have to go to these cancer institutes. You have to go to these Alzheimer's groups. You have to go to places where you're really not accustomed to talking marijuana and open up their minds. But slowly but surely, I feel like we're making progress.
All right. That's really, really good news. Now, another bit of good news that we've got going on. Maine just added more conditions to its medical marijuana program, including post-traumatic stress. Oregon just passed a law to add post-traumatic stress, and I'm happier than anyone to admit when a particular plank in the Box Canyon theory is wrong. And it seems to be, with respect to PTSD, we're getting more and more coverage of these in the medical marijuana states. What do you attribute that to, Dr. Mitch? Is it just people can't vote against the vets, or are they really understanding that this is a valuable medicine for PTSD?
I think it's starting to dawn on people, first of all, that PTSD, whether you believe it's a disorder, blah, 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 people are suffering. And we're also finding that we do have nice behavioral treatments for this, 12-session. They're intense, though. It's very difficult. It's hard work for 3 months, and folks drop out a lot. If they had something that could help them keep their symptoms under wraps while they go through the exposure treatments, that would be extremely productive and could be incredibly potentially helpful. But it's also, when you weigh the costs and benefits, what are the real negative consequences of adult cannabis use versus the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, which are just incredibly debilitating and complete unmitigated hassles. So I think slowly but surely it is dawning on folks, and it's not just patriotism, but if it is, by all means, let's wave that flag.
All right. Well, wouldn't that be an argument, though, for the use of cannabis in just about any disorder that it treats? I mean, its side effects being so benign compared to most of the pharmaceutical drugs people throw at it that it should be a medicine of first resort.
Well, and it's unfortunate, though, because I do feel like there are a lot of good cognitive behavioral treatments that folks can use to battle depression, to battle anxiety, and to battle post-traumatic stress, and then they could just use cannabis for fun.
There we go. We'll work on that. We're speaking with Dr. Mitch Earleywine here in our Cannabis Q&A segment. You can call in live at 971-533-7111. Also, a lot of people like to ask the questions through our chat room, so you can get into that through Ustream over on the side of the 420 radio page there. Just click on the pop-up link and it'll get the chat room available. Or if you're just shy, and I understand some of these things might be personal, you can send in an email through our contact form, 420radio.org/contact. Just go to the drop-down list and pick Ask Dr. Mitch. Or if you'd like to email directly, it's 420research@gmail.com. All right. So the other thing that's going on in the in medical marijuana right now that's kind of interesting. Actually, I'm sorry, not medical marijuana, but in marijuana legalization. And this is a story that I saw come up from the Huffington Post. Leaders of the faith community held a conference called A View from the Pulpit, Faith Leaders and Drug Decriminalization. It was at the American Baptist College, and a lot of it focused on the disproportionate impact of drug laws on minorities, on black people in particular. But I'm just wondering, Dr. Mitch, as we look at this from a sociological point of view, how have religions generally been co-opted in this drug war, and what is now leading them to fight it?
It's interesting because I had a chapter on this in Pot Politics years ago that tried to address this, and it's really a struggle. And I feel like getting the pastors on our side, so to speak, getting the clergy on our side is really important, and they have not been trained to see it this way. They've always been taught that all drugs are evil and that this is a separation from your spiritual self and things like that. And if they want to go that route, that's fine. But I think these disparate arrest records that have now replicated in New York and other cities and statewide and countrywide now, it's really spooky. I think suddenly this is dawning on them that, hey, this is targeting our people. This is targeting our own parishes here. Literally, my pews are empty because of this war, and suddenly that brings the light on. And I feel like that's definitely the way to pitch it to them is, hey, your church is going to be more full if you're not throwing minority kids in jail at disparate rates.
All right. Yeah, this is a wonderful development, and Drug Policy Alliance had a lot to do with this as well in putting this together. So kudos to them. I've always said if you can get a religious Republican woman to vote for legalization, you've won. And that's we're going a long way there. One other story that came up, and this brings back Professor David Nutt out there in the UK, who got fired for his views. I think he said using ecstasy was safer than horseback riding, which statistically was true. This was a story that actually Fox News reported of these doctors, a lot of these scientists, saying that the banning, and this was David Nutt saying, quote, the decision to outlaw these drugs, marijuana and some hallucinogens, the decision to outlaw these drugs was based on their perceived dangers, but in many cases the harms have been overstated, and these laws amount to the worst case of scientific censorship since the Catholic Church banned the works of Copernicus and Galileo, end quote. And as a scientist yourself, I just wanted to know if you had any comments on that story.
Well, I mean, I love Copernicus. It's delightful to see David Nutt come out so strongly on this, but in fact, the data are on his side, and I feel like, in particular, some of the promise we're seeing for the cannabinoids on Alzheimer's and dementia are the things that really inspired him on this one. And that seems like a route that suddenly, with the aging of America, people are really focusing on. As we see our parents slowly and surely, I hate to say it, but lose their minds, we really want to prevent this for ourselves, and this is an opportunity to just get this investigation done. Nobody's saying smoking pot's going to keep you young forever or anything wild like that. We're just saying we'd like to gather these data. Please help us. And they're saying no to that. As soon as you hear that, it's obviously a problem.
All right. Well, Dr. Mitch joins us every Monday here for Cannabis
We'll
Q&A.
Right
Thanks, Dr. Mitch.
Messages from our 420 friendly
See you
sponsors.
next week.
Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show.
When we come back, we got time for a little radical rant.